A very good evening, everybody. And in this last session for ASICON today, we have with us a legend who has walked the walk, talked the talk, and arguably without him, we would not be here today. Dr. Vinod Ingalhalikar has been credited with the genesis, the very genesis of the ASSI and of course ASICON. And without him, there would have been no ASICON and no legends at ASICON. He's lived life king size. We know him as a person with great academic repute, but also a person who's delved into life as a whole. And what he's going to tell us is going to be most relevant to our scenario because he's born and raised in the same circumstances that you and me have been. So, folks, hold on to your seats because this is going to be pearls of wisdom from our very dear Dr. VTI. Thank you, sir, for joining us. You're truly a legend.
Thank you, Abhay. I don't know whether I should be called Legion, but I could be called a old man of ASSI.
You're a person
or a grandfather of ASSI at the most.
Stories have been made and you're going to live through the generations. You already have. You're a legend indeed.
I'm extremely happy sitting here today, not because you're interviewing me, but because ASSI has reached a pinnacle now. And look at today's meeting. We have people from all over the world eagerly waiting, eagerly wanting to look at things. And they have been moved to the screen all through the day, whatever the time in their country. I think it's a very happy situation for a person like me.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, sir. Yes. So we are all very curious to know, you started the ASSI and you were solely responsible for how things went. Can you tell us how it was right then at the beginning, so many years ago, so many decades ago, when ASSI was just in its founding days? What was the response of the people and what work did you have to put in, sir?
Okay. Now, basically, it started, I was academically very active in general orthopedics. But during clinical meetings or clinical discussions, whenever the discussion would linger on for little more detail, the others would stop it. They would actively stop the discussion. Oh, you can discuss that later on amongst yourself. We don't want to hear that. I realized that a general orthopedic person or orthopedician was not truly deeply interested in deep deliberations. And I was kind of starving for discussion with people. There were a lot of people in Bombay that time, Dr. Chaubal, Dr. K.T. Dholakia, Dr. S.K. Bansali, Dr. Masalawala, Dr. Bavdekar, just to name few, and among neurosurgeons also, Dr. Ginde, etc., who did a lot of good spine surgery work. But nobody was allowed to talk and discuss. And I realized that unless we have a forum specially interested in it, these discussions, in-depth learning, these give and take would not occur. 1983 in Delhi, there was a meeting on spinal trauma. It was the first major spine meeting in India. It was organized not by Medico, but by Major Ahluwalia, who was an Everest quadriplegic. And during that meeting, I came across a lot of people who had similar thoughts and interests. And we went ahead, and with the blessings of Dr. K.T. Dholakia, Dr. Chaubal, and especially Dr. Bavdekar, who was very actively supportive to me, we declared or sort of opened ASSI, Association of Spine Surgeons of India, on 18th December 1985 during YROC, which is Bombay Orthopedic Society's conference, during that. And believe me, right within first half an hour, we had 18 life members who committed to me within that moment. So the need was there. And again, after that, it was just I would say, gallop. 1986, September, I organized the first ASSI conference. It was held in Taj, and we had managed to invite faculties from abroad, like Dr. Nakemsan and few other people.
What about the funding and the budget, sir? We are very curious to know.
Well, the total budget was 1,10,000. And with that, we could do it in Taj. And fortunately, The faculty those days, because of Dr. Dolakia's word and his credibility, they came on their own, except one person to whom we had to do small funding at that time. But the whole thing was, and the conference was attended by 160 people. Even then, the first conference of ASSI. ASSI is known for a good attendance in its meeting. Just prior to that, I did the first cadaveric workshop on spine at Sion Hospital. It was the first ever orthopedic workshops in India. I was inspired by ENT surgeons in our institution who were doing mastoid workshops. And I used to take my students to the anatomy hall for dissection and teaching them dissection. So almost 60 people joined the workshop way back in 1986. Thereafter, a lot of people from everywhere joined the stream. They eventually took over, and I'm very happy today that ASSI is a what we call a very healthy, robust organization, applauded, respected, regarded all over the world by people of all levels and all levels.
You reap as you sow, they say, guys, and this guy has sowed the seeds, and we are reaping the rewards. We thank you so much, sir, for what all you've done. Just moving on to another very, question that comes to everyone's mind is that a lot of water has flown under the spine bridge over the last 30 or 40 years, and a lot of technologies and techniques have changed. The way we are treating pathology has changed. How do you adapt to this? What do you think is going to stay in the future? What do you think is the bogus technology that is flooding the markets? Can you give us some of your insights?
Okay. One thing is for sure that medical science is a flowing thing. It's not a stagnation. It's not like you have something regarded today as a concrete and that stays on. I think except basic anatomy and basic biomechanics related to gravity or a basic body's behavior towards healing, etc., except those things, all other things are fluid. The disorders, patterns, their presentations are changing. The management patterns are changing. Certain patterns are rapidly advancing, then shutting off, going back to the original level. Some of the technologies have gone out of vogue. Some new technologies have come. So I think this is something fluid which is going on. And if I have to do justice to the patient, if I'm practicing and I'm treating a patient, I must do justice to him. And I can do justice to him only by living alive with the current trends, the current knowledge, current technology. Whether I adopt the technology or not is up to me or every individual person, but any practicing person, for the benefit of the patient and as a justice to the patient, he must be completely up to date and updated. He must, as and when possible, he must adapt to the new technology. He must. You can't remain stagnated. You can't remain stagnated. Should not remain stagnated. It's not fair to the patient.
I'm going to try to pin you down a bit, sir, because we want to hear this from you. Is there some technology that's going around that you feel is rather market driven and it will not stand the test of time? Instead, do you think there's some technology that you should have had, you wished you had 30 years ago, 40 years ago, which is a game changer?
Yeah, the technical tools part of the story, yes. The lot of cutting technology, the gadgets, the laser, the beams, the power tools, they all are useful. We lack them very badly, but we have adopted to them. They're good. Talking about market-driven technology, my guess is there's a fair amount of market-driven technology. Well, every manufacturer, every designer of a thing plans to make something better than what is existing. The point is that truly that effective, like what is said? Number two, is that cost effective? And number three, especially because we are working in India, is that can patient afford it? Is it affordable? And somehow my patients have always been from a lower middle class or lower class patient. I worked for a long time in a medical college, Invincible Medical College, and therefore my clientele has been by and large without much of a funding for them. So I had to keep on going on with the technology, which is approved, confirmed, and but I'm not against new technology. But market-driven technology, I think day by day, with the way marketing techniques and technologies or marketing trends are changing, it will happen more and more aggressively. It's up to us surgeons or end users to decide what is truly useful, what is truly not useful. Some people use it for one-upmanship. Oh, I was the first to do this. I was the first to use this. I don't know how appropriate that is. Or some people do, oh, I'm doing the most expensive surgery in India. I don't know how appropriate that is. But basically, it must be seen that one should be able to find out the good grain from the kernels.
Absolutely. Spoken like a true maestro, sir. Thank you for those insights.
And it's difficult to pinpoint that everybody would strive to market the technology. Only time will tell us, but we have got to be with the technology.
So, in the sea of this lucrative technology and aggressive surgical maneuvers, you have been, sir, a torchbearer for conservatism. And right through your career, you've preached and practiced conservatism in spinal disorders. You were the first person to start a back school on this side of the Pacific, if I can be, if I'm not wrong. And you've been running it for decades. You've been, the formator of the injection techniques course. Your physical therapy department is extremely active and intelligent, if you may. Can you talk us through your thoughts about conservatism in spinal
Okay,
pathology?
I'll tell you. My first teacher for my post-graduation was Dr. M.V. Sant. And he's supposed to be the father of rehabilitation and physical medicine in Asia. He's the first person to start a rehab center in India under the state central government. And during my early days, he insisted on my doing rehab course. He saw to it during my internship or my early trainingship, he convinced my other bosses to let me go away and attend those courses. So I did a course in physical medicine and rehabilitation. And I truly came to know firsthand that, look here, physical medicine is important, rehabilitation program is important, surgery is only one act of a drama of 2 acts or 3 acts. The further part deserves rehabilitation. Then my teacher, my next teacher was Dr. K.V. Chaubal, top class surgeon par excellence, the neatest and the cleanest surgeon I've ever seen. And fortunately, I developed love for the surgery, not a hate for rehab, but equal love for the surgery. And I opted to restrict my practice to spine surgery. And that is how the whole thing continued further. There's another thing. During our residency, the rehab departments were under the umbrella of orthopedic department. And after every OPD is over in the afternoon, it was my job as a registrar to go to the rehab department, sit there for half an hour, 1 hour, sort out all their queries, give advices, etc. And this I did for 2 years. Every OPD, at the end of OPD, I would go and sit there. So I have seen and practiced rehab firsthand myself, though I have practiced spine surgery also. So it was never unimportant. Well, something happened. You will be amazed to know. I started teaching spine surgery. I conducted workshops. I did almost 65, 70 workshops. Then I realized that people have not understood the basis of spine. Like I did not understand basis of spine before I studied biomechanics. And then I started teaching people the basic understanding of the spine, the rehab processes, the utility, etc. So some people have commented, you got tired of surgery now, and now you want to do non-surgical care. So I answered them. I said, no, no, no. I could learn the technicalities of surgery much quickly and earlier. It took time for me to learn rehab process so long to understand it clearly. So I'm teaching that now.
Fantastic.
All in all put together, I'm very happy that the results I got in my practice, and a lot of my students learned from that. We conducted courses for 7 years. Talking about back school, it's a psychological need of every patient to know about his disease in detail. Every backache patient, spine patient will ask you hundreds of questions. So I started informally talking to them, collecting 3-4 people at the end of the day, talking to them. And eventually, over a period of time, I converted that into a formal thing. Same time in Hamilton, Canada, there was a John Hamilton who had started Canadian back school. And Nakamson had a small back school that time. But ours was a back school which was far more in detail. It was done in regional languages, Marathi, Hindi, some sessions in Gujarati. And it was for 2 hours.
Such a futuristic thought, sir.
And we ran it for 29 years till the internet knowledge was percolated amongst the people, and they didn't. But even then, people still ask us, sir, we go to the Google and we go to net, we are not happy with it. We want somebody to tell us and explain to us.
Wish there was a Google Halikar amongst us, but you are one, and this has been literally a very forward thought so many years ago, and it's an information or a pearl of wisdom that all youngsters.
Another thing, talking about injection. I was invited as a guest speaker, American Back Society. Now, during that, there was a Kempin's workshop on endoscopy. I attended that. And I realized that endoscopy is something which will come to India later on, but it helped me to formulate my technology or my pattern of doing things. I also realized that a lot of C-arms during those days didn't have a very good pictures. So a lot of work was a guesswork, and I had to develop anatomy-based technology or techniques where even if the C-arm is not there or partially works and stops working or gives you poor quality images, still I could inject them reasonably successfully. And that's how people kept on coming and learning. And we have done a lot of things.
You've spent so much time and so much part of your life in spine that it's hard to imagine that you're the same guy who actually introduced the spinal community or the doctor community to a world outside your profession. Leaving aside any insecurity, you've dived into a life that runs parallel to your spinal practice, and you've been as successful in that. And sir, I request you to tell, use the last 3 or 4 minutes of this chat to talk to us about and inspire us about your life outside of spinal surgery.
Okay, Abhay, all of us, all practitioners who treat patients and operate upon patients go through stress. Maybe occult, maybe overt, but all of us go through stress. And we say, okay, at the end of, after another 2 months, I'll go on a vacation for 5 days. You get stressed every day. You can't have de-stressor at the end of 2 months or at the end of a year. Oh, whole year I'll work and then later on for 10 days I'll go to Switzerland. No, you can't do that. If you are stressed every day, you need a de-stressor every day. And if you can see your work email on weekends, why can't you see movie on the weekdays? Why can't you do something similar? Music has been my love from beginning.
You're the famous composer of the ASSI anthem, aside from the Bombay Orthopedic Society anthem, the IOA anthem, and the Bombay Spine Society anthem.
And I think music is one thing which will de-stress anybody and everything. I love singing. I teach music on the very heavy surgical day. At the end of the day, as a de-stressor, I teach music for 2 hours. 2 children, 2 elders. I have composed music. I have directed music. Taking care of my practice, I did a lot of extracurricular learning, One of that was doing a diploma course in music composition and music direction from Music Department of Bombay University. I also did a lot of yoga training to people. So these are CDs. I write poetry regularly. I write for stage. I write for TV serials. I have been awarded literary awards. I have started using music for my patients, and I use music for Parkinson's. I use music for other people, which is a very rewarding experience. I'm happy with that. Well, I had my tools lying idle, and I started using my bone skills on wood. I sometimes even harvest my wood. I have a farmhouse where I go and cut the tree branches, and then I shape them out, work them out with the tools of different kinds. Well, working is similar to working on the bone. Look at this. Now, look at this small block of wood, which can eventually can be turned into a beautiful lantern, or this block of wood, after processing further, can be converted into a vertebra. Well, three-dimensional friendship with vertebra has helped me to cast out this. And this is to the measurement. And the good part of the story, when I say 3D friendship, when I was doing this, I had no vertebral modding sitting in front of me. This is completely out of memory. So you start with a plain blank and get on, produce something. Start with a small piece of wood, convert that into a beautiful swan. Start with something smaller, and again do wood carving. All this is de-stressing. And one has to remember that de-stressing is very important. See, you can have a plain simple block of wood, convert it into this using the tools of different kind. I also enjoy painting and drawing. On the cover of your cell phone, you can make your own cover so beautiful by drawing and doing things. I enjoy. The most important part of everybody must have some fine arts in his life. Everybody must have. It may be anything. It may be sports, it may be music, it may be reading, it may be playing, it may be game, anything, but you must have some fine arts in your life. And don't wait for it. But I'll start it from the 1st January. I'll start it on my next birthday. By the time you do that, perhaps you're earlier caught up by Alzheimer or Parkinsonism or cardiac failure. Don't wait for that. Whatever you want to do, start it today along with your today's orthopedic surgery.
We absolutely hear you, sir. All the insights have been so helpful, and you're truly a guy who's larger than life.
This is my own portrait I've created using digital technology. You were asking whether I adopt to the new technology. Yes, I do, and this is the thing which I've done.
I won't ask you that question again. I saw you doing a 3D CT printed vertebral body just now.
Without a model in front of you.
Without the model in front of you. You've used better tools than the laser cutters. So what can I say about the man who's really, like I said, walked the walk and talked the talk? Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your insights. 20 minutes is always too short for a person of your persona. But it's been a great pleasure. And ASICON 2021, thanks, Dr. V.T. Ingalhalikar, for sparing this special time with us. Thank you, sir. And
thank you once again. Thank you once again. And I must say here something. I'll fail in my duty if I don't say that. Though I started ASSI, I nurtured it for first 8 years as a secretary, then up the ladder further. But my followers have done excellent job. They have reached the shores of other countries. And today, ASSI is a respected body. And I think their contribution, all my followers, their contribution, and people like you, young Turks, young live wires, I think if we were not to have this ACSSI would have been one of the aborted bodies, like many hundred bodies take a birth and demise.
Long
I
live
thank you all.
ASSI,
Thank
long
you all.
live VTI. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all
Sir,
of you.
such a wonderful talk and session. So I think, sir, in all your talk, we have forgotten to mention Madam Mrs. Inga Halekar, who is the solid rock behind you.
One can't be
And,
complete without a spouse.
Exactly, and such a wonderful lady, so kind,
You
so
enjoy the
large-hearted,
food. You enjoy
and
the food, and they enjoy
like the father figure you are, she is like the father figure that you are. She is similarly like a mother figure to, I think, the whole society, looking after everybody. And the second question I would like to ask you is that, what opinion is the reason that women are not joining spine surgery, are not joining the association? Why is it that we are not able to garner interest among the female orthopedic surgeons? There are almost 350 female orthopedic young girls everywhere, and we are not able to get them into the organization, even though I'm trying so hard.
Have you realized that amongst those ladies, majority are trying to go for pediatrics or hand or some such surgery? They don't even want to go for a trauma surgery as much, unless they're forced to practice a general orthopedics. So all in all put together, spine surgery is considered too arduous, too prolonged, too stressful, too complicated, which is truly not so. Well, it needs good amount of attention, needs a patience and stamina. There are two things one must have. You need patience and meticulousness. If you have that, anybody can become a spine surgeon. And ladies probably are inherently patient than gents are, and they should take up. I have talked to many of our orthopod ladies and told them, why don't you take up orthopedics? Why don't you take up spine surgery? And not really many. And if you see the world map of spine surgery, you will find about 6 or 8% women. So it's not only in India, it's all over. Though that percentage is improving, that is changing. I myself don't see any reason why a lady orthopedic surgeon or lady neurosurgeon why they should not take to spine surgery. They are perfectly capable of doing it. You are one of the examples for that.
You are very attractive and
I remain alone.
leadership at the top that's coming in. Dr. Basu, Dr. Gautam, and Dr. Shankar. I'm sure they're going to attract the female folk.
Thank you, everybody, for such a wonderful session. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir.
No, you were saying? I thought I thought somebody said, would you like to give a message at the end?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Well, technology, everything is fine. We are probably losing touch with clinical science. And I'm very sad at that. I've been an orthopedic teacher for over 40 years now. And I realize that every next generation of students coming in or fellows coming in, they don't want to give importance to the clinical medicine. Probably we as teachers probably are not impressing enough on them that clinical science is needed. I have seen patients with 6 or 8 MRIs, but none of the previous doctor's prescription paper includes examination findings. And it's a very sad situation that the second thing I would like to say that before you take up to the spine surgery, first prove to yourself that you are a good general orthopedic or a good general neurosurgeon. Practice that solid for 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. Your maturity as a specialist, as a spine surgeon, will be far, far different than when you directly jumped into spine surgery. So that is something I have seen happening. And all those who have done good proper general orthopedics, good proper general neurosurgery for sufficient time. I have come across recently somebody who said, I'm endoscopic spine surgeon. I said, well, do you do open surgery? Sir, I have truly not seen open spine surgery. He said he assisted somebody or he called somebody because he got into difficulty. That person came and opened the case. He said that was one of my few episodes of looking at a spine open. I don't think that's a very happy statement I heard. So if we want, as it is, spine surgery is in disrepute. The moment you tell any patient that you deserve surgery, they'll jump away like a frog will jump away. And this will happen 90% of the time.
Sir, with these words of wisdom,
probably we are not.
With these words of wisdom from you,
yeah.
I think we'll call today's session to an end.
Thank you very
much, sir. Thank you, Abhay. Thank you, Rushma. Thank you, Gururaj, for moderating sessions. We've had a wonderful time, great learning, but we've overshot by about 15 minutes, and that's why. And we have an early start tomorrow again at 7:30. We meet with the ASSI plenary session. So please do join us tomorrow morning. Another day of great academics. Thank you very much.
Good night.